There was a moment in graphic design where everything just snapped. Not literally, but visually, emotionally, and culturally, it snapped. Because after decades of chaotic layouts, clashing typefaces, and rebellious grids, designers basically saying that the rules are fake, do whatever you want, something strange happened. Design got quiet, like eerily quiet, and not in a boring way, more like a controlled, intentional, and almost intimidating kind of way. So today, I want to talk about what happened after postmodernism, when digital design rises and minimalism takes over, and suddenly everyone is obsessed with white space like it's oxygen. And I have thoughts, a lot of thoughts. So let's rewind for a second. Postmodernism was loud, it was expressive. It was messy on purpose. Designers were layering type, distorting images, breaking grids, and basically rebelling against everything that modernism stood for. It was like design had a personality crisis and decided to make it everyone's problem. But here's the thing about chaos. It's exhausting, like visually exhausting. At some point, it was just like people couldn't process it anymore. Brands couldn't communicate clearly. Audiences were overwhelmed. And designers started asking a very uncomfortable question. What if clarity actually matters? I know, groundbreaking, right? And this idea, it wasn't entirely new. Designers like Dieter Rams were already pushing this, the less but better philosophy. They argued that good design should be useful. It should be honest and it should be simple. Minimalism didn't appear out of nowhere. It was just waiting for the right moment. And around this time, something enters that changes the scene. The internet. The rise of digital design didn't just influence aesthetics. It forced designers to rethink everything. Because suddenly you're not designing a poster that someone glances at for 3 seconds. You are designing something for screens, interfaces that people have to use. And here is the harsh reality. If your design is confusing online, people don't just sit there and admire your artistic expression. They leave, like, immediately. No emotional goodbye, no chances, just like poof, gone. So all that layered and chaotic expressive design of postmodernism, yeah, that doesn't translate well to usability. This is where people like Jacob Nelson come in, literally studying how users interact with interfaces and proving that if something isn't intuitive, it just doesn't work. So minimalism didn't just win aesthetically, it won out of functionality. Minimalism in graphic design wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a survival strategy. Suddenly, designers are stripping everything back. Clean layouts, simple typography, neutral color palettes. And here's the funny part. Those grids that everyone rejected during postmodernism, yeah, suddenly they came crawling right back. Designers like Josef Müller-Brockmann had been advocating for grid systems and design way earlier. And now suddenly everyone's like, wait, this actually helps. Alignment matters again. Structure matters. Negative space, it isn't empty, it's intentional. And suddenly it was like graphic design went from screaming to whispering. And yet somehow it became more powerful. Because here's the thing, when everything is minimal, every element carries weight. Let's talk about white space for a second. Because minimalism made white space the main character. Because suddenly designers are leaving huge areas of nothing and calling it luxury. And you know what? They're not wrong. White space creates focus. It gives your eyes a place to rest. It makes content way easier to read. Everything's easier to understand, easier to navigate. But also, let's be honest for a second. Sometimes it feels a little too intentional. Like, is it elegant or did we just not know what to put there? Be honest, let's talk about it in the comments. Because I personally feel like minimalism walks a very fine line of being empty or intentional. And not everyone stays on the right side of that line. A huge driving factor in the minimalist wave tech companies. They needed interfaces that were clean and intuitive. It needed to be scalable across devices. So everything became super simplified. Icons got flatter, buttons got cleaner, design systems became standardized, consistency became more important than expression, and then you started getting designers like Jonathan Ive pushing very clean, very minimal, aesthetic designs into the mainstream. And this is where simplicity becomes synonymous with innovation. And in a lot of ways, this is actually amazing, because design is finally working for people, not against them. But also, let's be real, everything starts to look a little kinda like the same. You yourself have probably noticed this. When all the websites kind of start blending together, brands will start using the same sans serif fonts, the same muted color palettes, the same clean layouts. And suddenly, minimalism, which is supposed to feel refined and intentional, it starts to feel a little generic. Like design went from chaos to conformity. And I think that's the trade-off that no one talks about enough. Because yes, minimalism does improve usability. Yes, it makes design more accessible, but it could also remove personality if you're not careful. And this is where designers like Paula Scher become really interesting, because she's the designer that is actually able to balance bold, expressive typography and an actually very structured grid. She proves that you could actually have the best of both worlds. Because minimalism doesn't let you hide. You can't distract people with visual noise. You can't layer your way out of bad decisions. If your typography is off, everyone notices. If your spacing is weird, everyone feels it. If your concept is weak, there's nowhere to run. It's just you, your grid, and choices. And honestly, that's terrifying. That's why minimalist design is one of the hardest forms of design to pull off. But it's also really refreshing, and personally, it's the kind of design I like to do, because it really forces you to have strong fundamentals. And this is probably the biggest misconception of all. People think that minimalist design is easy. It's just remove stuff and you're done, right? No. Minimalism is about precision. It's about knowing exactly what needs to stay and having the discipline to remove everything else. And that's hard, because as creatives, we always want to add. We want to experiment. We want to express. And minimalism, it forces you to pause and ask, is this really necessary? And sometimes the answer hurts. But okay, here's where it gets interesting. Because minimalism, it isn't just functional, it's emotional. It creates a sense of calm and clarity, sophistication, luxury even. Think about luxury brands that use minimalism to feel exclusive. Like, we don't need to try so hard. And that as a brand, it's very powerful. But it also creates distance. Minimalist design can feel cold. Sometimes it could feel detached and almost too perfect. And depending on the brand and the message, it could either work beautifully or completely miss the mark. So, is minimalism the final answer? The short answer, no. Honestly, I don't think it's supposed to be. Because design is always reacting to what came before it. Postmodernism reacted against modernism. Minimalism reacted against postmodernism. And now, we're starting to see a blend. Right now, it feels like design is in this hybrid space. You have clean layouts, but bold typography. Minimal interfaces, but playful interactions. Structured systems, but then you also find these surprise moments. It's like designers are finally saying, okay, we learned the rules. Now let's bend them just enough. I think minimalism forced designers to grow up a little bit. Like postmodernism was like this rebellious teenage phase. Experimenting, pushing boundaries, questioning everything. And minimalism was like, okay, now we have responsibilities. It's like the difference between your teens and your 30s. You need to communicate clearly. You need to consider the user. You need to think about things that actually work. And yeah, that sounds less exciting, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a different kind of challenge. Because now the goal isn't to be expressive. It's to be expressive and effective. And that balance, that is where great design lives. But okay, guys, that's all I have for you right now. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more like this because I make videos every single week. And that's all I have. See you in the next one. Bye.